Welcome back to the channel. I've got some great news for FL Studio users. Last week, Novation released the FLkey 49 and 61 key MIDI controllers for FL Studio. Honestly, I'm quite excited about these. Last year they released the FLkey Mini with 25 keys and the FLkey 37. I've been using those for the last year, but now they've extended the range to give us more keys and some more features that many users were asking for. I've got some chapter markers below. We're going to look at the build quality, the design, the features, and also do a comparison. This might be the first time you've seen an FLkey, so what makes these special is straight out of the box, you just plug them in, load up FL Studio, and everything syncs up to the software, and that's really what makes these special. It's the integration between the keyboard and the software that just makes your life a lot easier when you're producing music. So for instance, the pads here sync up to the step sequencer, so you can easily program drums, switching between channels to add more layers, selecting individual steps or groups and adjusting the properties to really dial in a groove right here without the mouse. There are many more pad modes for finger drumming, where it links to the FPC, so you can play drums seamlessly, or you can use it for instruments to sequence and play full chords straight from the pads. And of course you can select the scale or root note and voicing of the chords. Moving across the keyboard, we have the transport controls, play, pause, record, undo, redo, all available right there, and they actually work. You'll know this frustration if you've used other MIDI keyboards. That stuff doesn't usually talk very well to FL Studio, and even if you set it up, it often misbehaves if you load it up later. So anyway, this works. It's simple, but it makes a big difference. Anyway, I've gone off topic. There's all the normal features you'd expect, like USB MIDI in, MIDI out, a sustain pedal input, but there's no power button. I don't think I mentioned this last time. I keep mine plugged in the whole time, so this isn't a problem, but there's no power button to turn it on or off. And then finally, of course, the keys themselves. These are full-sized and semi-weighted keys, which means they have a nice spring to them, but also a good amount of weight. Now this is quite a fine balance. Playing piano and strings is nice and expressive, but it's also got that springy responsiveness when you're playing something that's a little bit faster, maybe a little bit more synth-based. I've still got to talk about some of the new features, especially these faders, but the purpose of this whole system, why it's designed, is to give you much more control of the DAW from the keyboard so that you stay in your workflow. It's a little bit more immersive, a much more tactile experience when compared to just using a keyboard and a mouse. So what's actually new with the 49 and 61 versions? Well, besides having more keys, so 4 octaves and 5 octaves, we also have 9 faders. These naturally control the mixer in FL Studio. So we have 8 for controlling the mixer and 1 that's tied to the master channel. You can see here you can bank between sets of 8 with these 2 buttons here. They have a really nice weight and resistance, so just like the pots, this makes them feel really deliberate and careful. They don't just slide around lightly. It feels very natural for many people to push and pull these to get your balance right. You're not really looking at the screen too much at the levels, you're just listening on the speakers or headphones and blending it almost exclusively using your ears. Now, to know which track you've actually got selected, you can either look at the screen on the software or the screen down here. The faders are not motorized. That's not at all unusual. I don't know any MIDI keyboards that have motorized faders. They're very expensive. What this means is that as you bank to another set of 8, the fader positions on the controller don't match up to the DAW. So if you have pickup enabled in settings, which should be there by default, it means that moving the fader won't make an adjustment until you reach the same value as FL Studio, and then the controller will pick up and you'll be adjusting the fader here. This is great because otherwise there'd be random spikes and jumps in volume as you banked across. Another new feature they've added is a pattern mode. This means that you can create a pattern or clone a pattern just by holding Shift and pressing the preset buttons. And they've also added this feature to the FLkey 37. You just need to do a firmware update if you have that. This means that you can either create a new pattern straight from the keyboard, which is quite obvious, but it also means that if you're programming drums and you want to make a slight change to the pattern but keep the original one, you can just clone the pattern, make a slight variation, and you've got both available for you, and it's so quick and simple. It's one of those things where I'm just kind of surprised it wasn't there earlier. So it's clear that I like the features, but let's have a chat about the design and build quality. So the design here is very minimal. Now, I'm not at all a minimalist. I actually like intricate detail and design, but on a keyboard, I'm very happy to see that it's minimal, relatively plain. Just like the smaller keyboards, the build quality itself is excellent. You know how some keyboards, the actual keys can go a little bit yellow when exposed to light or just time? This hasn't happened at all, so this is the 37 I got last year, and this is the new one I got last week. There's no change in color between those, which is great. It's a bit disappointing when you get something and it looks really faded after just a couple of months or a year. It's a quality piece of kit. It's clearly made to last. When you've got it in front of you, it's very clear that it's made with some care. The device doesn't give you the feeling that any corners have been cut. When you're using it and enjoying it, it just feels like a quality, solid bit of kit. So we've talked a lot about the features and the build, but let's do a bit of a comparison here. Which one might be right for your studio or your needs? So clearly the FLkey Mini is for compact setups. I keep it on my desk almost all the time to trigger samples and when sound designing. It's got a really small footprint, so you're not going to notice that it's there when you're not using it. It has small keys, so they're not full-sized. It's enough to play chords and leads and melodies, but you're not going to be able to play full arrangements on this with two hands very easily, unless you're incredibly skilled. The FLkey 37, it brings you 3 octaves of keys. I think it's the best choice for producers who want to perform their virtual instruments and have a really solid MIDI controller, but you might have a compact setup like I've got here and not much space on your desk. FLkey 49 brings you 4 octaves, which is more than enough for most people to express themselves and perform with ease. It's probably going to fit on your workstation. Mine's a little bit compact, so if you've got a small setup, you'll probably want to put this on a keyboard stand like I've got here, or maybe an under-desk keyboard tray. Now, I can't make those keyboard trays work. I'm too tall for them, so it's always too low or too high. It's just not ergonomic, but I know many of you put it under the desk, and this 49 key would be a great size for that. Of course, you get the faders here, which you don't get on the 37, so if you absolutely need the faders, then you're definitely going to want to get this one or the 61 key version. And finally, the 61 key version, which is just huge, gives you 5 octaves. If you're the sort of person that needs that many keys, you likely already play classical piano with 88 keys, which I think is just more than 7 octaves. So if the thought of having less than 61 keys scares you, then that's definitely the one for you. If you're performing live shows or need the full expression of the keyboard without octave buttons, then that's definitely the one for you. So that's us done with the keyboards, but importantly, if you have any questions or comments, just leave me a comment or message me on Instagram or Discord. I really am here to help. I've used all these keyboards, so if you've got a question about the keyboards or really anything, just get in touch and I'm here to help you out. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.